welcome to the New Legend podcast. New day, new voice. We're going to change things up a little bit this week. My name is Andrew. I'm going to be interviewing Sean. Hello, Sean.
Hey, buddy. It sounded like you're going to bring us some soft hits from the 80s.
And I'm next. No. So what we're doing this week is we've done a lot of like brand building type episodes in the past with friends of ours. Those have been a lot of fun, really popular. And what we thought we would do this week is kind of flip the camera and ask those types of questions of our business and our brand and where we come from.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. And just a little quick context. If you guys remember, Andrew did an episode, the takeaway from my perspective of that conversation that I didn't know going into the conversation, so I really appreciate it, was defining your personal space and kind of crafting your environment, whether it's through clothing, design, every aspect. So I thank you for that. That was a good contribution to my thinking. And so, but Andrew's on the team here at Anything Scout New Legend. And we talk all the time about this stuff. So it'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah. So I think the good place to start is to just open it up. Actually, I wanted to ask your first interaction with Scouts specifically, because I know you were in high school. You were a Chevy C10 guy?
Yeah, I had a bunch of C10s.
Okay.
Grew up always working on stuff.
That was like high school age.
Before that, it was like I started working on. We lived next to a landfill, like in Connecticut, kind of like not really rural Connecticut, but like the Shelton, Connecticut area. My dad had installed an alarm system in the dude's house that owned the landfill next to it was like literally a quarter mile away from our house.
Like as a job, not as like a...
Yeah, as a job.
Covert. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then had installed a security system at the landfill. So we basically had this like backstage pass. And what was rad about this landfill was super close to my house. And it was all divided like metal, wood, garbage. So we'd obviously never go to the garbage section. We would always go to the metal section, and there would be bicycles, go-karts, motorcycles. There was all this stuff. And so when I was really little, what it started with was bicycles. So we'd get like, when you take like a 10 speed and you put like a kid's bike front wheel on it and like a banana seat and like these just weird hybrid bicycles. And then, as like our mechanical skills got better. And what was interesting is my dad was always like very much a mechanical enabler, and he would answer questions when we had him, but he wasn't like a helicopter. I think of how, like, I'm raising my son Owen, he's almost 16. And it's been very purposeful because there's a context shift in our world. But I've been very intentional about teaching him mechanical things.
Sure.
With me, it was definitely like, my dad just let us go.
Yeah.
Like we had a lot of freedom. And so, then it turned into bicycles and tractors. We get like lawnmower engines and put them on mini bikes. And like just total experimentation. Like you take a vertical shaft lawnmower engine, but we didn't know it wouldn't run on its side.
Okay.
So then like we tried to flip the carburetor funny, and then it would run out of oil and it get seized up, and we just go throw it away and get another one, try again. And then when I was 15, it started getting into vehicles. And I got my first, for my 15th birthday, my dad, and we were just super blue collar, man. Like, so it wasn't like nice, but I remember it was $500 back in 1989, 88, 89. It was a 69 fleet side short bed C10 two-wheel drive pickup with a straight six. I think it had like I don't know, you guys know better than me, but like a 250 cc's cubic inch or something, straight six, or a 290 something. And I started, and all of a sudden within a year I had a collection of like 6 or 7 C10 pickups. I would just go, which is so funny. And then when I graduated high school, moved to California, kind of did this thing. I never got away from working on stuff, but it's so funny that all those roots from when I was a kid are exactly what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've read, because we have 2 kids, I've been reading a lot more into like not pushing your interests too much on, but still like doing just enough to like plant that seed.
Right.
So that's cool to hear.
And that's a good point, man. Like, because sometimes you push hard and you can't push any harder because they just reject it.
Right.
But at the same time, I think like being around the shop, my kids, like, I think inevitably, I mean, number one, Owen loves it. Like we'll have these like Saturday work sessions where we just work on our personal stuff or his scout or whatever. And he has said to me like, and it wasn't always the case. When he was like 10, 11, 12, he'd be like, I don't want to go to the shop. Like I hate that place.
Yeah.
But then he became 13. He started loving the culture and just the freedom of being in a shop environment. It's a pretty interesting environment. We've talked about even compared to like home building or remodeling where you're out in the field, and that's got its own cool context as well. But like being in the shop, like back to your defining your personal space, it's your shop. So it's like it starts to take on your personality and the personalities of the guys that work here. And so, yeah, but he would just say like, I love, like, this is my best day of my life. Like this, I love this.
It must have been cool to see him and his friends putting a motor on a bicycle recently.
Yeah, dude. They got these little just Amazon gas 2-stroke engines for their bicycles, and they did it 100% by themselves, and he paid for it, and they called them their pans, and they had like a little bicycle gang. They'd just rip around.
Pan gang.
But they're all, as 13, 14-year-old boys will do, they just thrashed them, like took them off big jumps. And so they like, Owen's like, my brakes don't work. My wheels are all bent, and it's just thrashed.
Good learning experience.
Yeah. So that's really cool. But yeah, so my dad again was like, and my mom too, just I don't know if it was a different time or just whatever, but like by the time I moved to California, like it was like, hey buddy, we're getting letters from the city, like we have too many cars in our driveway, and you got to get these things out of here.
Yeah.
And that was and my brother was older than me, and he was into cars as well. So we just always, that was our life, man. Racing on weeknights, and like in retrospect, very slow cars to today's standards, but so fun.
That's right.
Dream upbringing.
Okay, so how did you get from C10s to Scouts?
And a Buick Skylark.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The main whip. So like the
Yeah.
C10s, I actually never got one fully finished.
Oh.
Yeah. So I like, because I made the critical mistake. Then we've talked about this on the podcast a little bit. Instead of just getting it running, I had it like almost all together. All I needed was a drive shaft. So I had a 396 big block with a cam and heads. I could build all that stuff, swap meets. Me and my friend Jay Dokla, we'd go to like Carlisle, Pennsylvania swap meets, and we'd buy cylinder heads and used camshaft and just whatever we could get our hands on to build this. And I had a turbo 400, 12 bolt posi rear. I built all this stuff, and like I just couldn't afford to buy the right size drive shaft. And then I would just go out there and start it because I didn't have my license yet. I would just go out there and start it and rev the mess out of it.
Oh man.
I just was revving it up too much. And I like bent some push rods.
Oh no.
And then I took it apart, and then I'm like, while I'm at it, I'm going to just restore the frame. So I took the cab off, put it in the backwoods, like took the bed off, I just took it all apart. And that's how it got brought to the junkyard.
Oh man.
Yeah. I sold the engine. I actually sold the engine, and I bought a GMC Sprint, which is like an El Camino.
Yeah.
That like it was like this mythical car in the town. Because my brother had this 74 Z28.
Okay.
And it was pretty. It was a 4-speed 373 posi, like cool car.
Yeah.
And supposedly this El Camino had raced that Z28 and beat it.
No way.
And so that car was for sale for $1,000, and it had some like the starter got stuck in the on position, so it like chewed up the flex plate. And so I sold my 396 for $1,000, and I bought this GMC Sprint. And I took the engine, and the car was shop. So I took one of my, like a 307 out of one of my C10 trucks, put it in the GMC, sold it for like $1,500 because it was all rusty on the floors and stuff. And then I took that 350, cleaned it up. And this is like pre-internet by a long shot. So this is like
for sure.
Summit Racing catalogs, JC Whitney catalogs. This is like me as a 15-year-old ordering parts out of a catalog.
Jeez.
And I can't remember how I paid for it. I think it was like CODs. Like I would give cash to the to the delivery driver.
Wow.
That was a thing. So pretty innovative and entrepreneurial as a young guy. And like, this is no like, Dad, can I order parts for my car? I was just like, I'm just doing it, you know, because I worked. And so I had my own money, and it was great. But anyway, then I bought this Buick Skylark out of this trailer park for $35.
Oh my god!
I think he wanted 40, but all I had was 35.
Classic.
And yeah, it was so awesome. It was just, and I took that engine out, the Buick engine out, put the Chevy drivetrain in it, drum brakes. It was classic.
Wow.
And I just raced it all through high school. Me and my buddy, we had a great time. And it, like we did dumb stuff, but it kept us out of trouble, if that makes any sense. Even though I got tons of speeding tickets and like I was getting in trouble.
Just different kind.
Yeah. But it wasn't like self-destructive trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of creative. So anyway, I'm telling how I got to Scouts.
Okay.
So when I moved to California when I was 18, graduated high school, my other buddy Bannigan Jay, who's been on the show, he moved to go to Cal Poly. So in a couple months after I moved to California, to Northern California, he was in Central California. And I brought like a suitcase full of some clothes, and I shipped my 350 engine that came out of this GMC Sprint, dude. And then into the Buick Skylark. So I was living at my aunt's house. I just had this engine in her garage, and I was like, I need a car. Like I want to find a car to put this engine in. And then I met, who's now my wife. I met this girl Heather, and really liked her. And she had a brand new Jeep Wrangler. And this is in 1993. And she had just bought it. And I, even though I had a Blazer, also like I had a 69 K5 Blazer. And I did off-roading as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. But I didn't really, that was just like messing around in the woods and like construction. Like there'd be like a construction lot and you'd go like, blast through there and go through some mud. But out in California at a place called Hollister Hills, we took her Jeep and I was like mind blown. Like we can take this Jeep on all these obstacles and trails, and it was like this whole new world opened up to me. And then so I got the Jeep. I saw this engine sitting in my garage. I was at my aunt's house still.
Yeah.
But then I had this Jeep that I started like, and then as we got engaged and got married a year later, the Jeep it was still hers, but it kind of like became mine. I put a lift on it, bigger tires, like a winch, sliders, like, and started wheeling it, but I never really loved it. Then fast forward to 1997, we had it for 4 years. Engine's still sitting now in my own garage now.
Really?
Yeah. And I'll get to the funny part of the story.
Okay.
Sorry, it's long, but Jeep, never really loved it. We had Isaac, my first son, was born, and we remember we also had an '86 Grand Wagoneer Jeep at the time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that was a fresh vehicle.
Yeah.
But when we'd put him in the Wrangler, we couldn't fit his stroller in the back. Like we could not close the door, like side gate. And so we're like, this Jeep does not work. It doesn't work because we wheel it on the weekends, but not crazy about it. It's too new. And what was cool is I think we bought it for $14,500 in 1993, brand new off the lot. And I put a lift, I put a winch, I did all that stuff on my own. But in 4 years later, in 1998, we sold it, or 97, we sold it for $10,500.
Huh?
That's pretty good.
Okay.
Like Jeeps hold their value really well, even back then.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit of money. And I think at this point we had gotten rid of the Wagoneer and got a 91 FJ80 Land Cruiser. That was kind of like mine. We gave that to Heather. And I said, I'm ready to buy this vehicle. Context, in that time I had the Jeep, my brother-in-law, Mike, had a Scout. This 1978 Selective Edition, 345 T19 close ratio. Beautiful
Best truck ever made.
Best truck ever made. No rust, brown. I can't remember what designation brown it is, but when I drove that truck, it was literally love at first drive. It was like the perfect vehicle. And so I said, I got to get a Scout. And so of course I had this engine in my garage this whole time. This is the funny part of this. So I find a Scout for sale, 79 Rally.
Cool.
It's this maroon color. I can't remember the technical name. 4-speed truck, blown engine, $1,000.
Perfect.
Awesome condition. And so I'm like, this is destiny.
Yeah.
So in last episode, you guys, if you listened, we talked about the philosophy of like why we put different engines. So this gives a little bit of backstory to that, because I wasn't a tried and true IH guy.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't even know I couldn't tell 345. I had no idea what that was, because in the Northeast where I grew up, there was no Scouts.
This didn't last.
They all rusted away. I saw one in my life the whole time. And when I drove my brother-in-law's, I'm like, I remember seeing one of these at my dad's super lowbrow blue collar yacht club. Use that term loosely. So anyway, so I had this Chevy. That's all I knew. And I've been hauling this Chevy around since 1992.
Jeez, dude.
And now it's 1998. So 6 years. And I finally like pulled the heads off it to like, I'm going to freshen it up a little bit. And it was so shot.
Oh,
it was
no,
hilarious.
dude.
Like the pistons literally were like floppy loose on the
rattling.
cylinder walls. Like it was so, because I had this saying in high school, 6,000 RPMs a day keeps the mechanics away.
Oh, yeah.
So I was ruthless to this engine, but it was like never blew up. So to me, it was like this invincible thing. Tore it apart. It was tons of like detonation, scarring on the pistons. The valve, it needed a valve job.
Just poor memory?
What's that?
Just poor memory on its condition when you...
No, it was running. When I pulled it out of my car, I was doing burnouts the day before. You know, like because I scrapped the Buick because it was just, I put too much Bondo on it and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, so then after all that time,
Jeez.
I ended up keeping the block. No, I don't think I did. I think I just scrapped it after all that, because it needed to be bored, and it was a 2-bolt main, and it was blah blah blah. And I read this article in like Hot Rod magazine about this 406 with 400 horsepower, 500 foot-pounds of torque out of a Chevy 400, small block 400, punched out to a 406 with longer rods, these AFR heads. Like, so I went down that pathway.
Wow.
And I contacted, I can't remember, some engine builder, and I spec'd out what I wanted. They built it. And it was a beast, you know, and that started that maroon Scout. And in that time of owning and working on this non-running maroon Scout, it took me probably 5 years to build. I did everything myself except for the paint job.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to fabricate. I bought a welder. I bought all this stuff. I fabricated a reverse custom Alcan springs, Dynatrac Dana 60s, Atlas transfer case, MV. It started with a T19 Dana 20.
Yeah.
Then I got an MV 4500, an Atlas transfer case. I mean, it was like, this is cutting edge stuff. I had put $40,000 of just hard cash into the Scout. Because I was like, Heather, we can either go buy a brand new vehicle or I can put 40K into, I'm like,
by the way, I've heard that, strategy from several customers that I've talked to in the last couple of months.
Me too.
I mean, we're kind of down the same path.
Ditching the Sequoia.
Yeah. Daily driver. Dolly.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Original powered
you gotta know
IH
what you're
Scout
getting into.
is difficult to daily drive. It's possible.
Yeah.
Just difficult. You got to be in it, like fully engaged.
So you're heavily invested in the Maroon Scout.
And by this time, I had gotten a couple Scout 800s as well.
Question. Where were you working? What was your job up until, like, before you met Heather? Like, right when you got to California?
Well, I was volunteering at a church, like doing youth pastor kind of stuff. But at the same time, I was working at a place called Granger in their warehouse. And that was a really fun job because it got me around tools and equipment.
Yeah.
And I was learning about all these possibilities of tools and equipment.
Right.
And I got a little discount. And so I started building my tool collection. I also, before that, I worked at a body shop probably for a year. And then also during that time, I was like painting houses. So all like just trade kind of stuff.
Right.
So no experience running a business.
Yeah.
Again, just one little story. When I worked at Granger, because this is important because as people, especially young people, I don't know how many young people listen to this show, but as you try to there's a process called like doing a timeline where you reflect on your life and you kind of look at like key events, key motivations, like what brought you happiness? What did you do well at? And if you go through that process of looking at your life, my early days working on stuff, my early days of buying and selling vehicles, there was like some entrepreneurial roots in there that I didn't know. I mean, I knew I had them, but I wouldn't have said like, these are entrepreneurial things. To me, they were just natural motivated abilities. When I was at Granger, for example, I started working in shipping. I worked in the counter. I think I first started working behind the counter, learning the catalog, which was helpful.
Yeah.
Then I went into shipping UPS. Then I went into shipping freight. And then I saw this trend where like we were paying like all this money to all these maintenance people. So like people are driving forklifts, the forklifts are breaking down and they're paying top dollar. Like I think I saw one of the bills once and it was like 12 grand a month. And this is like 100,000 square foot warehouse. Maybe 50,000. It was a big warehouse. It was a main distribution center.
Yeah.
But they're paying like 12 grand a month fixing forklifts. And we had a fleet of these. They were like battery powered forklifts. Like most of them were like you stand up and you ride them. I can't remember what they're called.
Right.
Or they would like smash into like the shelving and the shelving get broken. So then they'd pay someone to go like weld and fix the shelving or paying maintenance. So I'm like, why are we paying all this money for all this maintenance? Why don't we just start our own internal maintenance and repair division? So I put a proposal together, pitched it to the management. Management's like, that seems good for our bottom dollar.
Yeah.
So I partnered with a forklift brand that we serviced with. I got like a full inventory of replacement parts and I set up this workshop in the back in the shipping area.
Wow.
So I had my toolboxes and I was welding, because most of the damage on these forklifts was collisions. Like because they like are rear steer, so like guys don't realize and gals how to drive them really well, and they swing the rear around and smack
Spin
into
around.
like those yellow safety poles at the corners of all the shelving. So I was like welding doors and like changing bearings and wheels and battery maintenance and all this stuff. And for a year, dude, I just ran my own department and reported to myself, and that was like the best year of that whole 4-year time working at Granger. Then eventually like central management found out that this branch was doing that, and it got shut down because of liability insurance and all this other stuff. And they're like, we're not a maintenance company, we're a parts distribution company or whatever. But again, just like that was a nodal moment in my life of like, hey, I did that from nothing. No one said, can you think about a maintenance program? I just said, like, here's something that needs to be solved. I can solve it. So then I'm building these scouts, and I was very fortunate, like crazy fortunate that I was in San Jose, a couple towns away in Mountain View and Palo Alto, there was a scout shop. And so I got to know Jim, and I was a regular customer, spent lots of money with him. And I noticed that he was having fun, just doing this cool business that everyone's passionate about. Like everybody's motivated. No one's like, oh dang, I have to go buy scout parts. So I was learning so much about these unique vehicles and the history of the International Harvester. And by this time I had a really cool 1974, I was like doing more hard rock crawling, like the Rubicon, Fordyce, and then I had this really nice rig that was all finished. It took me 5.5 years, finally finished. And in 1999, Jim, we had been joking around, and he was like, hey, you ready to buy my business? And I'm like, maybe how much? You know, and I think at the time he was like $400,000. And I'm like, I don't have $400,000. Like, there's no way. And then and 99 was during the .com bubble. So like I just saw a lot of money changing hands. Yeah. And I said, like, there's opportunity here. This could be a good business to run. And so 2 years go by, the .com bubble pops, and now it's 2001, 2002, and some things that happened, like one of his guys had, like, his head manager, I guess they had a conflict, and the way he solved it was he left and started his own business. I can't remember even what it was called. Scouts. No, I can't remember. Something. But
in California.
Literally 10 miles down the road.
Oh, jeez.
And when he left, he took Jim's Rolodex of his customer database book, which was all not in a computer, I don't think, at the time or whatever.
Right.
And he started calling all Jim's customers, like, and bad-mouthing Jim and trying to start. It was just not the right way to do it.
Sure.
But because of that, Jim had lost a couple employees. It was a hard time for Jim as well. But it set this context to where, like, that I came back to the shop because I was always pretty loyal to Jim. And I'm like, hey, are you ready to sell? And he's like, yeah, I'm ready to sell. So that was in 2001. But I'm like, I don't know how to run a business. Like, I think I knew more than I thought I knew, or than I realized I knew. But so I said, like, can I come work for you for a year? I'll work for you for whatever, $15 an hour. I'll learn the ropes, and then we'll talk in a year. Problem.
Yeah, I see.
When you're negotiating a business deal, we had already we had not negotiated a price.
Yeah.
And I should have put everything in place at that point. But at the same time, I wasn't 100% sure if I would dig it. So we moved out of the junkyard, got a shop. Like, mostly under my, like, responsibility, got the shop back up and running, started building back up customer trust, like, started getting this operation going. A year later, it was going pretty good. Like, we had customers coming in, working, shipping parts. And then it was time to negotiate. But I'd added a year of sweat equity and value.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I was like, I know what just happened to Jim. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to stab him in the back. Because I could have taken, and I think he was like $200,000 or something like that. I probably shouldn't share that to everybody, but I don't care. It was 20 years ago. And I didn't have $200,000. So we equitied our house. Like, we begged, scraped, and borrowed every bit of money we could. Another piece of advice for starting a small business is, but you're passionate about it, you just do it. And my wife, Heather, she's awesome. She was on board. We had invested all of our money in buying the business, and we had no capital for operating costs.
Yeah.
And all this stuff I got from Jim was like, a drill press from 1974. That was like the bearings were shot. And like, so most of the tools and equipment I got were clapped out in garbage. So it's a very hard, but anyway, we did it 2002 and a half, like the fall of 2002, we opened our doors in San Jose, moved the business from Mountain View, East Palo Alto area to San Jose. And I don't know why I'm wearing these glasses, but they are kind of cool. Yeah, man, moved that operation and started, okay, here we go. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but what came to my mind was like the core operating principle at the time was, and I was 27, I think I was 27 years old.
Wow.
3 kids.
Jeez, dude.
And Heather we just decided she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And so all the income responsibility was on me in this new business. And it was a very difficult period of our lives, but really exciting. And we had this little shop, we're like, I don't know, 1,200 square foot shop. But I knew this. I wanted to bring the International Scout to a new generation of people. Yeah. So I was this 27-year-old young guy with open sensibilities. I wasn't like this hardcore IH guy. So I wanted to bring this amazing thing to the rest of the world.
Right, because when you encountered that first scout, that was your brother-in-law?
Yeah.
And then bought your first scout. The collective automotive culture at that time was still like, what was like the big thing in like automotive magazines? And it was like ramping up to more like American muscle car era.
Definitely like Fox body Mustangs,
right.
Like 4th gen Camaros, muscle cars.
In other words, old kind of clapped out 4x4s weren't sexy yet.
No, not at all. And like Boyd Coddington hot rods were like these slick, smoothed out, like think of like the 90s.
Right.
No offense to 90s car builders, but they were, for the most part, really kind of terrible.
Stylistically.
From a stylistic sensibility.
Well, and then I think of, like, from my own experience, like the early days of like Discovery Channel automotive.
Yeah. Monster Garage.
Yeah. That kind of like chopped.
West Coast choppers.
Yeah. So, it really was kind of a smaller niche, like subculture of.
And in the vintage 4x4 world, which really didn't exist yet, it was definitely like Scout what? Like International who? Like it was all about Broncos. We used to say it's like the redheaded stepchild of like of the vintage 4x4s, because like there's so many misnomers. Like oh, they're half Chevy parts, half Chrysler parts, half. I'm like, that's too many halves. But like no, they're international. Like I got the 304. That's the AMC 304. No, it's an IH. What's IH? So much misunderstanding. And at the time, there was a burgeoning like kind of. It was still early. Jim was one of the pioneers of like a Scout light line dealership, and we've talked about that in the history of the Scout episode. But it was hard to get parts, and because we wanted to reach a new generation of people. And this is something I wish I was more intentional about, like in the moment. But we wanted to be the first. So we were the first to have all of our inventory on a website. It was like this static inventory list with prices that I had to update manually.
Yeah.
We were the first to have online ordering. We were the first to like all these technological things. And I'm not a tech guy, but I guess, just one of the younger guys in the movement. So, and like later in our story, when it was time to like because during that time it was all about forums, like and we were like, I just never really resonated with the forums, like the type of personalities on there, just flaming people, and just I didn't like that. Good information, would like, I don't know what's that term when you like lurk? Yeah, you lurk on forums and don't ever really post or don't ever really comment. You're just like kind of gaining knowledge.
Yeah,
which is a great thing of forums. But when it came time in 2013 to start like really telling our story, which in retrospect, that's the thing I regret most about those early days, was not documenting our story.
Right, because was that 10 years that you guys were building?
From like 2003
okay.
to 2007. Even when we moved to Iowa, up until 2013, 2012, like we had there's very, very little documented history of our brand.
Yeah.
I see like trucks that have our stickers on them from like the late 90s and early 2000s.
Huh.
But yeah, because I was like Polaroid cameras. It's just, so I'm bummed about that. I don't have any pictures of my kids at the shop, that old shop, and they all were a part of it. I have very little customer truck pictures. So I do regret that. But in 2013, we started getting serious about telling our story and connecting with people. And we just said, forums are old school. Like, I'm not dealing with that. We're going straight to this thing called YouTube, which it's not like we're a pioneer in YouTube. It was kind of late at that time.
Right.
But for an a vintage 4x4 brand, we put a lot of effort into it to just tell our story and just connect with people and educate and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Those early days, man, I was just so desperate to make a living and do good quality work. But my only takeaway was like hard work, accepting responsibility for your mistakes, and bring Scouts to a new generation of people. Like, that was our kind of driving mantra. And of course, like today, we've got a much more well-developed business, and we're still learning, and we still struggle through things. It's really difficult to. I say this often to entrepreneurs, like, and even college-educated entrepreneurs. Like, oh, by the way, during that whole time, I did get my college degree.
Nice.
It took me 7 active years, and then 20 years later after that, I finally got it finished. But so I was going to school, but they just don't. It's like think of like all the Jonathan Ward Icon, any of the Bronco builders. Like every single one of us that's doing this is figuring it out ourselves, and we like talk to guys. We lurk and like observe other inspirations, but we're all figuring out. And it's like, to me, that's a shame. I wish there was more open sharing of like actual business practice and business struggle and innovation. But it's like everyone kind of has this perspective that it's a zero-sum game. Like there's only this certain amount of resource in this space, and I got to carve out my little piece of it, not necessarily for nefarious purposes, but just for my family, for my employees, like for all like for our vendors, for everybody. And so it's hard, man. We're like, we've been a team together for probably 3 years on and off. Yeah. Really focused for the last year. And dude, 80% of our conversation is problem solving.
Oh, for sure.
And building a brand, like figuring out how to do it. But so many entrepreneurs, my friend Tom, clothing, anything. It's like every entrepreneur has to figure it out on their own. And like you get lucky to tap into tools. Like we chose Shopify for our web platform, and like, oh, there's all these plug-in apps. Like the first online website we built, we paid someone, 60, 70 grand to build this bespoke website that he was the only one that knew how to work on it. So when it would crash all the time, it was like I was so beholden.
Dude, that's more common than you would think.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I wish college was better, like to just equip you for real life entrepreneur, running a business, starting a business, whether it's a coffee shop, restaurant. Like And that's some of the impetus of this podcast is like get those creative people to share a little bit about their story. It's crazy. I don't know. I hope it's changing. There's a lot more, like, for example, YouTube. You can learn a heck of a lot of stuff from just YouTube.
Yeah.
Even about marketing a product or getting an idea, or shows like Shark Tank for kind of maybe as ridiculous as that show seems.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun. I've learned stuff from that show about how to know your numbers and how to structure a marketing, campaign or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the nature of being an entrepreneur is not, it's like almost the definition is not knowing.
Right.
When you set out to do it.
Yeah, I think of it like as a pioneer. Like, what is a pioneer? Yeah. An entrepreneur in a lot of ways is a modern day pioneer, because you get an idea, you believe in the idea. You can't really be told otherwise. Because when I was starting out, before I had to scrape, beg, and borrow for money, I applied for an SBA small business loan.
Yeah.
And I met with part of that process, and I've told this story before, but part of that process was meeting with this SCORE or something group of retired executives.
Yeah, I've been in those.
You have?
Yeah.
It's like these old bankers and stuff are just like, okay, son, show me your business plan. I'm like, I don't really have a business plan. I just want to work on scouts and sell parts and do a good job. Like, no, you got to put a business plan together. So I sat at this SBA resource center, worked my butt off for like 3 or 4 days, put this business plan together. I thought was like pretty good. I'm sitting in front of these 4, might have been a woman in there too, but like these 4 people, and they're just like looking over my business plan, glasses down their noses.
Barely on there.
Barely on. And they're just like, this is a terrible idea. I would never invest in this business, and we're going to recommend that SBA doesn't fund you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? It's a great business. Like, this is, like, I've seen it with my own eyes. Like,
because you weren't starting from scratch.
No, and like I knew what the numbers that Jim was doing with a very rudimentary, not even accepting credit cards. He was doing $40,000 a month in sales, and I'm like, that's a great start. We can capitalize on that, and we can clean things up, and we could market better and do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And they just rejected it. But to me, that was actually fuel.
Yeah.
The first year of business was like just proving those guys wrong. I'm like,
yeah,
but I didn't really prove them wrong, because like the first 5 years, I thought to myself, probably 100 times a year, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah,
because like, man, it'd be so desperate. Heather is an accountant, and so she would do our books, and she would be like, yeah, we need $6,000 by tomorrow to pay rent and blah blah blah, and I'm like, we don't have no money.
Yeah.
So I better just work for 30 hours straight. So there was many, many nights I would just sleep at the shop and just work around the clock.
Yeah.
See the sun go down.
Yeah.
Work all night. See the sun come up. Work all day. See the sun go down, and then almost collapse, and see the sun come up, and then keep working a 40-hour shift, because and you go, I just did it. Now I just build out. I finished 3 trucks, and now I can 3 clutches. And back then it was like the origins of the brand were not, I should get into this a little bit, why we moved to Iowa.
Okay. Yeah.
Because back in San Jose, it was like the age of buying a $500 Scout was commonplace. And you put 35s on it, do a spring over, put lockers and gears in it, and you have a truck that can go competently do the Rubicon. And so that's what it was building roll cages, suspension, a lot of tune-up. It was all just tune-up work. I did do a couple modern engine swaps for the time, because I was open to it, and figured that out. But I was just a mechanic, and I after about 5 years of that, I was like, and just killing myself, never seeing my kids. Like I was like, well, I did this for my kids and my wife. Like, and I don't see them anymore. Like, what's the point? And Heather's stressed because she's basically a single mom with no money. It was hard. But I'm like, I didn't really want to be a mechanic. That's like I love mechanics and working on things, but for me, I didn't want to just wrench on trucks all day long. Even though I love it, I still love it. I wanted to run and grow a business. So Heather and I, about 2005, we were having a tough time in our marriage. Everything was just so stressful. And we're just like, we visited a friend out in Iowa, and it was just this wide open country. And we're like, this is amazing. Because I grew up on the East Coast and I experienced West Coast, and I loved California. But I'm like, man, we just felt this like sigh of relief being in Iowa. And we're like, and I always wanted to build new scouts. Like, that's what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't want to like always repair them. I wanted to build new ones for this new generation of people that are going to want them.
Yeah. Right. Believe me.
They will someday. And so yeah, but man, so we just said like, and there was like this friend that we visited. He's like, you should move out here, man. And he was from California. So we're just like, talked and prayed about it. And we're just like, let's do it. And so we just put our house up. We planned and did some things, but we bought a lot, started building a house in Iowa, sold our house in California, and almost killed myself again by moving a business with 500 transmissions and so many used parts that make your head spin. That was crazy. And so, but finally moved. We were building bumpers out of my home garage while the shop was getting set up. So we had this plastic sheet hanging in half the garage, and like I built the house with extra power and some things, but it had that. And I was wrenching and shipping parts. Like, it was crazy. And that was in 2007. So 2008 through 11 was another challenging phase of just restarting our lives and restarting. But I made a couple of big commitments, and this is probably for a different episode, but I made some commitments around my family.
Okay.
Like, I'm going on field trips.
Yeah.
I'm going to coach soccer teams. The business, like, as long as we can survive. And now that our cost of living is so much less, I don't have to grind as much. So I'm not going to, these kids are like, now my son was 10 to 1, like my kids, 10, 7, 4 or whatever, and 1.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're not going to be that age ever again. I'm not missing this. And so really from 2007 to 2012 was that phase of just like simmering along the business, like not really fully engaged in the business because I was about just being a dad. But I could never like pay my employees enough. It was just like I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was like, should I get another job? And a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm sure, can resonate with that.
Yeah.
Like, it was like a regular occurrence. I would just look for jobs, but I'm like, I have no qualifications. I don't really have my degree is kind of specialized. I just know how to like barely run a business. But kind of jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. And in most corporate jobs or whatever jobs, they want to see you specialize. They want a marketing guy, or they want a sales guy, or whatever. And as an entrepreneur, you're doing a little bit of everything, which I think is beneficial. But yeah, so 2013, it was a new big paradigm shift for me, where I had this like house flipping business, and I was on like school board, and I was a president of the soccer club, and I was doing like I was doing everything that was like, I was like Jim Carrey and like the Yes Man. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, what am I doing? I'm doing everything, but I'm not succeeding I'm not being successful at anything. And so this one word came to mind in 2013, and that was focus. And so I said, this scout business is great. Like, this is a great opportunity. I've given a lot of my life to it. Like, I'm going to focus on this business. And guess what? I'm going to focus on bringing the scouts to a new generation of people, and a new generation. And you guys have heard me say this, but in this new generation of people doesn't have the infrastructure or the knowledge or the desire or the bandwidth to wrench on greasy old engines for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it. They want to get in, turn the key, and have a great experience, just like the IH engineers intended it to be in the 70s.
Right.
They didn't want to go like, hey, buy this high maintenance vehicle.
Right.
That's going to break down all the time. And again, whatever, we don't have to dive in too much. So for me, that was about this fusing of modern technology. And I'd heard of Jonathan Ward out at Icon doing this stuff. And I'm like, that's what we're doing. And so I covenanted to myself in 2012, like this is the last, I was building this 345 or 392. And I built a lot of engines in my day, and I really enjoy it. It's like very therapeutic, and I enjoy it. But I'm like, this is the last professional engine I'll ever build. I'm just going all in on these conversions. And we just got a lot of heat, we got a lot of flack. But we went out, and then we said, we're going to tell our story. We're going to start making videos. And if you look at those old Anything Scout 2013 videos, our friend Brandon Clanky, best guy on the earth, he would make our videos for us with like a camcorder. No, I don't know. Like he had digital stuff
on the shoulder.
Yeah. I think he had a D90 or something. Were they out in 2013?
Was that Nikon?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
But dude, we started making these fun videos. And
you should go watch them.
They're really fun.
I watched a few of the early ones a couple weeks ago. They're good.
Because at the time, they're actually to some extent, they were more thoughtful than our videos today. Like, because I was like,
there's an energy to them for sure.
Yeah, there's like that Scout 80, that brown Scout 80 one, where I was like so inspired by Dick Prenicky from,
right.
Alone in the Wilderness, Alone in the Wild. You should
watch that too if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, PBS, best thing ever. So I just wanted that calming like narration style, like to tell a story, put the potential Scout owner or the new Scout owner, like, yeah, I could go out into the woods and chop wood and take my kids on a little, and like this, and little tidbits of development, like making the mundane memorable. That was a big thing. Like, dude, Scouts are so fun. When you just go to the grocery store, it becomes an adventure.
It's true.
Not because you don't know if you're going to make it back. That's where you're at.
I mean, that's the responsibility of the owner.
Yeah, that's right.
Not the family members.
That's right. But it just like, it's fun. It's interactive. Like when you go out in a Scout, like everyone wants to talk to you, which is good on some days, bad, annoying on other days.
Mostly
but it's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, and there's this great community. So like we started defining what we wanted to be, and we started, and really it was really cool to see quickly, almost by our business has grown almost 25 to 30% a year since 2013. Because we started speaking to people and reaching people and started doing what we set out to do in 2002, and that was introduce Scouts to a new generation of people, whatever that meant. And we felt like that's our guiding principle. And that led to, in 2014, the development of like, how do we dream even bigger? So we've got this modern engine. How do we go to the next step and really innovate a modern driving experience with every bit of the vintage? Now that's kind of impossible to do, to capture every piece of the vintage experience.
Yeah.
While having of the reliability, performance, and I would not serviceability. Old stuff's pretty easier to work on, but just that reliability, performance, efficiency, all those kind of things about modern engines. What is the ultimate expression of that? And that's when in 2014 the concept of New Legend was born, and it took till 2016 to realize the vision on a full modern chassis. And like as our guys gained skill and competence, like our employees, like I had these kids that started with me in 2007, these Iowan kids that are now 30. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And as their skill developed, they wanted to express those skills. Like, and like, I don't want to just do clutches my whole life. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, what are we capable of, and what's possible? And so we started dreaming up, like, from paint procedure to sheet metal procedure to everything. And I think that's where the New Legend brand really got birthed. and we still have both brands. We're still passionate. We have what's funny is like, as I look back, our scouts today are so much better than they were 10 years ago. Like, no comparison. Because our team, these guys are far beyond my ability. I used to be like the most skilled at every aspect. Like, I was the best welder. I was the best paint and body guy. I never really did interiors, but now it's like, if I can weld better than you, you're really not qualified to work on trucks.
Yeah.
Like on our trucks. Like our guys are so skilled and so excellent at what they do. It's really a proud thing for me. And like my role now is I'm really trying to like not stay in the shadows, but just be the face of the brand. And we were talking yesterday about staying in the strategic aspects of because now I have like these, 18 to 20 people that I'm responsible for and providing for them. They're providing for themselves, but just creating an environment that they're able to succeed through pursuing a passion and doing excellent work.
Right.
And so, now we're into I would call this phase of our business, we're out of the SOS phase, like it's emergency, putting out, like the problems are today's problems. So now we're solving 3 years down the road's problems, and we're innovating process. And like our customers are so amazing. They're patient with us because like it's been, timelines have gotten pushed out. Yeah. Like in addition with COVID, all that stuff, but we're building better and better vehicles. And you've been a big part of that too, in creating systems. And that's another big, sorry, I'm talking so much, but I'm the guest.
No, that's good. Yeah. I asked you.
Yeah. But getting the right guys, if someone said like, what's the most important thing that you've done for a new legend and anything scout? And in my opinion, it's getting the right people. Working hard myself, always trying to be an example. Different, because now that I'm in the office all day long, it's easy for the guys to have like an upstairs, downstairs, like management, floor worker mentality, like where there's like, what does Sean do all day? He's just watching YouTube videos. But it's my job. They're thinking about, how do I build this truck excellently in a process-driven way, so it's serviceable and reliable. And we talked about this principle of 1-to-1 is one of our stated new core values, and that is like that those our techs, embodiment, and craftsmen have a 1-to-1 connection with the owner of that truck, who's going to have their kids in it and their wife in it, and the safety like of adventure. Every experience that they're going to have is directly connected to tightening that bolt to the correct torque specification and routing that wire with a grommet, with proper, like everything, every little detail is a direct connection. And so that's my job I bringing you, like our relationship merging and coming together is Andrew, the interviewer, on top of his excellent interview skills, is very good at identifying systems and creating processes. Processes.
I'll accept either.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm an ideas guy, but you help put those ideas into a fashion that's repeatable and it's understandable, and we can communicate it to people. And that's what it takes, man. We cannot run the business today like we did 10 years ago. Yeah. And 10 years ago, we couldn't run it like 10 years before. Because it's just the nature of the beast, and you still have to hustle. And that's, as a personal one of my own, I'm 47 now. And what kind of gets me up every day is like still the same commitments I have had for a long time. But one of them is like, I gotta hustle. Like, as these new 27-year-old, the new Seans of today are starting scout businesses, or kids of old owners are taking over their dad's businesses. Like they have hustle, and I have to keep, and it's a different hustle. Like, where back in the day I would drive 24 hours to go get a scout so that I could get that job and then turn it around and work all night and work all for a week nonstop, doing a clutch, roll cage, gears, locker, and then I'd throw it back on the trailer and drive back 20 hours to New Mexico to drop it back off so that I could get paid and I could pay bills and go like, we just did that. Now I could breathe for a half hour. And then that's the kind of old school hustle. But now like the stay in the strategic, like I got to be creating this environment. I got to be thinking about 3 to 5 years down the road. It's just the context is all different, but the hustle and work ethic and values are all the same. And now we just do it as a team instead of, it was more like an individual. I mean, I had a small team. The San Jose team was at its heyday, I think 4 employees.
Oh, wow.
And my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he would just volunteer down there. He was awesome.
That's great.
He was kind of like the guy that watched my back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as you know, I'm kind of like pretty happy-go-lucky. Like I'm not super. I feel like Tyler, Ben, Luke, you guys have my back now.
Yeah.
In a good way, like of outside threats and internal threats of myself.
Yeah.
To go, no, Sean, that's
and
too much. We shouldn't do that. That's important.
Yeah, and that just goes back to finding and investing in the right people.
100%.
It's one of the hardest things to do, but when you have the right people and you know it, it's that principle of like, keep your people in a position to do good work.
Yes.
That's like that's Richard Taylor.
Oh, is it?
What a Workshop.
What's interesting, man, is like, it's also back in the day, it was about the work and about the output, like, or these trucks that we're building. And now really the purpose of this business is really about the employees. It's about caring for this little passionate group of individuals that have committed themselves to this journey as well. Because there are sacrifices to working in a small business,
for sure,
a small passion business. And I've tried to not make that like so hard, and I still try today, and we'll try in an hour and in 2 years and every day after is like, and I've said this before, but like the guy building a Scout that's going to be lovingly and like and really empower so many things about this family's life and become a part of this family's life is not less important than the guy that's programming for Apple. But the dude at Apple's making $200K a year, and like the mechanic is making a lot less than that. But I don't think their work is less valuable from a societal standpoint to anything. I would argue at any rate for the common good. These trucks and having families have memories together, and there's other ways to make memories, but I just think it's important work to even future generations, but like preserving this American story of International Harvester and its and all of its evolution. There's room for keeping it in its purest state and room for innovation. That's life.
Yeah.
That's life in cities. That's life in everything. But that's good work, and we're trying to equalize that, which just means they got to cost more.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work, dude.
I mean, it really is. And I feel like we're doing a better job of being a little more transparent with that process as well. Like even on the drivability conversion side, with like being pretty clear about what processes we go through. Yep.
And I feel like we've really figured that out. Like the process and flow from sales to final product, from sales to warranty and everything in between on the anything Scout drivability conversion. We've got that, even scheduling, we've got that pretty well. I think like 75% really mechanically. I think we've got it. Scout 2's 100% figured out. Like we got our system dialed. But as a company and workflow, I think we've got it 75% figured out. On our new Legend builds, which are everything 100-fold.
Yeah.
So if there's a ripple and delay in an engine conversion, like that same ripple, when you have, it goes tenfold when it's a full restoration,
right.
and a full, from a supply chain to customers out sick, or employees out sick for 2 weeks, or, you know, you have a tragedy in the family, like whatever, like all those little ripples, there's hundreds of little ripples. And in a big multi-year process, it just gets, so I feel like we've got the vehicle side of it pretty figured out, but I feel like we've got the production process 40% figured out. Yeah. Maybe 50, because we've made some big innovations that we'll share in a future episode.
Right.
Huge capacity innovations that we're just hoping the investment pays off.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, man. These trucks are incredible. Like new Legend trucks. When I test drive one of our Legend Series trucks, I was in our customer Mark's Legend Series 800. I'm like, dude, it blew my mind. I'm like, this truck is so amazing. And I'm around it every day. I'm not physically building it. Mm-hmm. And when customers see me like doing Instagram, whatever, they're like, why don't you like put that phone down and go work on my truck? It's like, no, you don't want me working on your truck. Trust me.
Yeah.
But they're so good, dude. They're so, I'm impressed by our own trucks, but it just takes so much time, and we got to get that process streamlined. So that's our goals for the next 3 years, is to really get that process dialed. And I think we'll do it.
Yeah.
Get the next generation of the right people on board, the right systems in place, the right parts distributors lined up, the right subcontractors, everything that it entails to build a custom vehicle. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah, because the common thread through all of this has been the like bringing scouts to the next generation. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone, like the next generation, only wants like the top of the line modern Scout.
That's right.
Like there's
100%
guys like me that just wants to like restore and maintain the truck that they have.
Yep.
And go on adventures with their family.
Love it.
And so we're working on innovations to streamline that for those customers as well.
That's right. Yeah, and it's always been important to me, because I'm a blue collar guy, man. I like that we have something for everybody. Yeah, there's some phrase about like white collar or something, but blue collar hustle. Like, I don't know, but just we want to have something for everybody, whether it's like you're buying a $14 set of spark plugs for your 152. It's a good expensive spark plug. Whatever, from just like maintaining your old terrible like old Scout 80 to like a full out Legend series. We want to be a part of all that story and enabling all that, all those opportunities for those people. So that said, buddy, we're an hour and 8 minutes in. Long episode.
Yeah.
Building a brand.
That was good.
New Legend, anything Scout.
Yeah.
Guest host, Andrew Willoughby.
Thank you for your time, Sean.
Thanks for listening. Until next time, do something awesome. Talk to you guys next time.
See ya.